In every sport, you have your championship rosters, you know, the team to beat. But, on the opposite end of every season, there are always those teams that are the exact opposite. Terrible teams are always a given in any league, and the Overwatch League was absolutely no exception. Today, I'm going to go over all of the truly terrible teams in Overwatch League's history, and determine which one of them was the worst. If you like the Overwatch League or Overwatch esports, consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this one. Apologies if my voice sounds a little weird, I'm currently recovering from a nasal surgery, but with all that said, let's start out with the most well-known terrible team, the 0-40 Shanghai Dragons. 2018 was a very strange year for the Overwatch League. Being the first season, there were a lot of really weird teams and a lot of bad players as well. The Dragons in 2018 were mainly the Chinese team in the league, and unlike modern day, where there's lots of great Chinese players like Shai, Guxue, Leaf, Monk, Xerneas, and many more, this team notably had a lot of not very great players. Sure, players like Dia, Geggery, and Fearless were pretty good, but the rest of the team was lacking. And even these players were not really good enough at the time. This was well before Fearless was the great player he is today, and Geggery and Dia were the main standouts on this team. Now, 2018 was very special, because it had by far the most games played of any season, with a whopping 40 games, and Shanghai somehow managed to lose all of them. Sure, there were a couple of close games here and there, such as their 5-match series against the Philadelphia Fusion in Stage 1, or when they took a map off of the NYXL in the London Spitfire in Stage 3, but a majority of their games ended in an 0-4 fashion, and this team just couldn't seem to win a single match. In fact, this team was so bad that in Stage 4, Dia actually ended up winning Player of the Match in a game that he lost, because he carried the team so hard and he was unable to drag this sad team over the hump. This was the first and only time in Overwatch League history that a player won the Player of the Match award for a loss, so that just goes to show how tragic this team was. In total, throughout 40 games, the Shanghai Dragons ended up winning a total of 21 maps, averaging barely over half a map per game. That's pretty terrible, and if you look at their record, they lost 141 maps to their mere 21 wins. This team was so bad that a lot of people straight up didn't watch their games, and I don't even blame them. Luckily for Shanghai, they would soon turn their franchise around in the following years, but this begs the question, are the 2018 Dragons the worst team ever? Well, let's look forward to the 2019 season, where the worst team of that year was the Florida Mayhem, who won a total of 6 games. By default, 6 wins is a little bit too much to be the worst team of all time, but the squad was certainly still a stinker. Moving to 2020, we have the Boston Uprising, who got a grand total of 2 wins throughout that season. The 2020 Uprising were certainly a team, and their most notable accomplishment was winning one of the best and worst matches in Overwatch League history, aka the Toilet Bowl. This 7-map, first to 5 regular season banger between the Uprising and Outlaws was, and still is, an iconic game. But aside from this one, the 2020 Uprising really had nothing of note happen throughout the whole season. This team won a total of 14 maps throughout 21 games, averaging .66 maps per game. This team was certainly terrible, but not close to terrible enough to compete with the 2018 Shanghai Dragons. Moving over to 2021, something must have been in the air this season, because there were 3 teams that were awful this season. Let's start with the least bad and work our way down though. The 2021 London Spitfire was supposed to be an EU super team, and it was comprised of most of the British Hurricane Corps. But a lot of ping issues and some mediocre performances from several members caused this team to only win a single game throughout the 2021 season against the equally bad Vancouver Titans. This Spitfire team ended up winning 12 maps in 16 games, averaging a .75 maps per game score, and although they lost 0-3 in most of their games, they did take the San Francisco Shock to map 5 in June. London may have been pretty bad, but the pieces of their teams to come were there, and besides, there were somehow 2 worse teams in this very season. 2021 Vancouver Titans were more of a joke than an actual team. They were more well known for their breadsticks meme than any actual performances they had throughout the year. This team also ended up getting a single win, that being a really weird 3-0 win over the Boston Uprising, which really came out of nowhere. This team in total gained 10 map wins throughout the season, averaging .62 maps per game. The most notable event for this team was that time that Teru clutched a 1v6 with Dragonblade against the Gladiators. Unironically, wild play. The other main highlight was that one time that Fried Wiener was staggered by the Outlaws for over a full minute. This was absolutely one of my favorite Overwatch League moments ever. Take a look.
Block, now the Blizzard comes out. Dalton down. Another Outlaws fight win here on defense. I legitimately cannot believe the Titans go for that TP play in.
I mean, they have no option. One thing, you've seen it a few times for the Outlaws. Not really as much for the Titans is FRD. He's gonna... I mean, this is just... like,
oh, hell. Oh, no! The remake got interrupted!
I know. This is brutal.
He couldn't even remake. He's 2 HP! Oh my god, the most disappointed looking Ned Flanders I've ever seen! All the dollary dues in the world couldn't buy him a new mech, Matt. That is devastating.
That is not nice. I mean, the guy's having a tough one. Let him play.
I think someone's in the chat, Crimson's just laughing. Just type that's rough.
That's rough. And then we get a sad. FRD said something in the chat as soon as his mech got interrupted. That buys so much time, though. Like, it's insane.
All right, Brian Wiener back with a vengeance now. Gravitic Flux, though, means that this one is already over again, and don't do it to him again. Give him a hero's burial, Piggy. Don't
no, the Piggy's laughing. I mean, he has to run into the Symmetra turrets just to make sure it's over fast.
Now, as bad as these two teams were, they don't hold a candle to the worst team of 2021, the LA Valiant. I'm not going to beat around the bush. This team fucking sucked. But that's not really the players' faults. In January of 2021, after the end of the 2020 season, the LA Valiant randomly released their entire roster and most staff. The Immortals Gaming Club, the Valiant owner, signed a 1-year operating agreement with LGE, a Chinese esports organization, and the whole team was moved over to the APAC region to play with a budget Chinese team. This decision made a lot of their fans, players, and analysts alike hate them. They really screwed over most of their players because they released them with little time to find a new team, and although some of them did find a new home, a lot of them never did. On March 18th, 2021, the Valiant announced their new roster, which included 7 Chinese players, most of whom were either not ready for Overwatch League, were washed old players, or in the case of NVM, straight up didn't even play the game anymore. Notably, Hybe was signed to play main support, even though he was an off-tank player. This team was a disaster, and the actual notable players on the team were Crystal and Mulanran. Crystal was only notable because of his controversies in the past about refusing to play, and Mulanran was the only highlight on this truly terrible team, actually trying his best to win in the awful situation he was put in. These guys were paid pretty much nothing, and according to Coach No-Hill, they also had terrible living conditions too. These guys were basically being tortured. To say this team didn't even put up a fight in the season is an understatement. They were the second winless team in Overwatch League history, winning a grand total of 2 maps through the entire season, averaging a .125 maps per game. Their first map win came in the opening week against the Chengdu Hunters, who were not really taking them very seriously. Plus, they had their own problems going on at the time. Their other map win was actually one of the funniest map wins in Overwatch League history. After a rocky start to the season, the Philadelphia Fusion just needed to 3-0 the worst team in the league, the Valiant, in order to make it to the tournament qualifiers. The Valiant at the time had 1 single map win, and even the disappointing Guangzhou Charge easily swept them out of the way. But on Numbani, the Valiant did the funniest thing ever, and not only beat the Fusion, but they actually full held them. It was hilarious that one of the worst Overwatch League teams of all time were the reason why the Philadelphia Fusion missed out on the June Joust that year. Naturally, the Fusion easily won the rest of the series, but that one map loss was enough to eliminate them from contention. The Valiant did not win a single map for the rest of the season, and they ended their season 0-16 with a grand total map record of 2-48. The 2021 Valiant was one of the worst teams of all time, definitely up there with the 2018 Shanghai Dragons. But are they the worst of all time? Well, let's look forward and see if there's any more teams bad enough to match up to these two. In 2022, the worst team was the Paris Eternal, who won a single game against the NYXL midway through the season. The main issue with this team, though, is that their team that started out the season and ended the season were entirely different. Originally, they had that EU core from the beginning of the year in 2021, but they dropped their entire roster midway through the year and picked up an NA Contenders core. The team actually got the win over the New York Excelsior with the roster pre-drop, although Wub and Dove were on the team. In total, the team only got 15 map wins, averaging 0.6 maps per game across 24 games. This team was really, really bad, but a lot of the players were put in really bad situations, which made it really difficult for this team to succeed. I would consider the squad in the conversation of worst team, but in 2023, this same team got worse. In 2023, the LA Valiant were also a pretty terrible team, only getting 14 map wins total for a 0.87 map wins per game. But they did get 2 wins, including one over the formerly Paris turned Vegas Eternal. The 2023 Vegas Eternal, on the other hand, finished in dead last, being the third and final winless Overwatch League team, with a grand total of 5 map wins done, averaging 0.31 map wins per game. This team was poorly managed from start to finish, with several members of the team citing Avala, the team's manager, to be a major problem for this squad. Not only was it poorly run, but several members of the team were straight up not great, and midway through the season, after only getting a single map win in the first half of the year, this team dropped every player aside from Dove and Rack Attack, who were notably the better players on this team. Crazy enough, another player, Luke Mino, once he moved to a better team, instantly started playing better. Just goes to show that the Vegas team was run really badly. Midway through the season though, they picked up some Korean imports, and they did a little better, but it was too little too late to save this team, and they were only able to get 4 more map wins in the second half, including a map 5 loss to the LA Valiant. This team was poorly managed, and it put a lot of players in awful positions, made it so hard for them to succeed. But luckily, players like Rack Attack, Knife, Pistola, Naga, and Luke Mino were able to get success after escaping this horrendous team. If this team hadn't picked up those Koreans, who knows whether they would have even gotten another map win. The Vegas Eternal was definitely a failure, but they were the worst team of all time? Maybe. Let's compare them though. Firstly, let's eliminate a few teams. As bad as they are, the 2019 Florida Mayhem and the 2020 Boston Uprising, they were definitely terrible, but they had way too many wins to be considered the worst. As for the teams that had 1 win, the 2021 Spitfire actually showed a bit of fight, and if a few things had gone a little better for them, they probably could have had 2 to 3 more wins. The 2021 Titans were also pretty terrible, but they had a lot more potential than a lot of these other teams, and they were able to fight up to some more teams. As for the 2022 Paris Eternal, I simply can't pick them because they got worse in the next year. So, that leaves us with the 3 winless teams: the 2018 Shanghai Dragons, the 2021 LA Valiant, and the 2023 Vegas Eternal. Technically speaking, the 2018 Shanghai Dragons did lose the most games, but that's only because they played the most games due to the 40-game season in 2018. It's not really fair to compare the amount of losses they had, because each of these teams played drastically different amounts of games. So, to tiebreak, let's take a look at the amount of map wins these teams got. The Dragons took 21 map wins in 40 games, which puts them at a 0.52 map per game ratio. The 2023 Vegas Eternal only got 5 maps, but they played only 16 games. Doing the math, that gives them a 0.31 maps per game win rate. The 2021 LA Valiant, though, tops both of them by a lot. They only won 2 maps throughout the whole season across 16 games, giving them a 0.125 maps per game. This is insanely low, and it makes sense when you consider just about how bad of a situation these guys were in. With that terrible statistic in mind, I think it's pretty safe to say that the 2021 LA Valiant are the worst team in Overwatch League history. The 2018 Dragons and the 2023 Eternal might have been really bad, but at least they put up more of a fight than the poor 2021 LA Valiant. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts on who is the worst Overwatch League team of all time down in the comment section below. If you want to see more from me and support me, I've got a Twitter, link in the description, and I've got playlists full of content just like this one on the channel. I'm glad I was able to get this video out considering my recent surgery and the brutality that is finals week, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. With all that said though, thank you so much for watching.